Alright everyone, we're now going to sew the sleeves. Alright, I have a video of each sleeve, how to sew. I have two separate videos for the sleeves, one for the straight sleeve and then one for the sleeve with the dart. Okay, I'm going to do the straight sleeve first, and just one thing I should mention, the sleeve with dart, I actually have already, the video for this I've already created at an earlier time. Like a year ago or something. So that's the video I'll be using. So you won't be actually seeing me sew this sleeve with the dart. Okay, but it's all done the same way. All right, and so you'll see that in the video. These are all links to all these are in the description below. And so the last things we have to do is sew in the sleeves. All right, so let's go ahead and do the straight sleeve first. Oops. Alright, so here's the straight sleeve. It's already been marked up. Okay, there's our right side. And just remember that one of the sleeves is straight like this, and the other one has the dart in it. Okay, and you need a right and left side. So make sure you don't end up cutting out two left sides or two right sides or marking them incorrectly. Okay. The sleeves probably are the hardest part of this whole project, and it's not necessarily sewing the sleeve, but actually setting it into the armhole. But even that isn't too bad. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in our ease stitches into the sleeve. Okay, remember the sleeve has a front and the back. All right, the straight sleeve. Or this sleeve, we have one notch. We have our directional notches. Okay, so we have one notch in the front that indicates the front of the sleeve, and then two notches in the back, which indicate the back of the sleeve. All right. On the sleeve with the dart, it has the same directional notches, but just remember it also has a dart here at the elbow, and that dart is in the back of the sleeve. All right, so let's put this aside for just a moment. Okay, so I'm going to mark these directional notches on here so you can see them a little better. So here's my front directional notch, and then here are my two back directional notches. Oops, it looks like I missed one. When I was cutting this out, it looks like one did not get notched. Let's go ahead and just make sure we notch that. There we go. Easy to fix. There's my second directional notch. Alright, so here's my front directional notch and my two back directional notches. We don't need to stay stitch anything at the cap of the sleeve at all. We're not worried about things stretching. We're actually easing things in, so we're not too worried about that. Here at the hem of the sleeve, we're going to go ahead and stay stitch at an inch, whatever our hem allowance is, which is an inch here. Okay, just like the hem of the skirt, that gives us a nice clean edge to press up the hem of our sleeve against. Okay, so we'll do that in just a minute, and we're also going to go ahead and put in our ease stitches. Okay, sometimes there's ease notches up at the top or closer to the top of the cap of the sleeve that indicate where the ease goes. In this case, we don't have those, so our ease stitches are just going to go from our directional notches all the way through the top of our cap, and then back down through other directional notch. Okay, we're going to do 2 rows of ease stitches. One at the seam allowance, the 1/2 inch seam allowance we have, we'll do that. And then the second one will be 1/8 of an inch in to the seam allowance away from that first row around the sleeve cap as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our ease stitches at the top of the cap, and then also our stay stitching. And once we've done that, we can then go ahead and fold right sides together and stitch our sleeve up at 1/2 inch. Okay, all right, so let's go to the sewing machine. All right, we're at the sewing machine. We're going to put our ease stitches in first. Here's my directional notches. So I'm going to start right above my directional notches, and I'm going to make sure I leave long threads because I need to be able to pull those. And let's go ahead and put our needle down and our foot down. Now we're going to stitch these with an ease stitch, so we're going to lengthen our stitches. All right, so when we're stitching with our regular construction stitch, that's about 8-9 stitches per inch. This is going to be closer to like 6-5 stitches per inch, give or take. All right, so I've lengthened my stitch. Here we go. Again, I'm stitching this on I'm stitching it at 1/2 inch. and I'm going to stop right before I get to that front directional notch. There we go. So there are that's my first row of ease stitches. Okay, see that. Let's do a second row. Again, leave those threads long on each side because we're going to have to pull them eventually to create our ease. And we're going to do a second row, and this second row of stitches is going to be in the seam allowance. It's going to be about 1/8 of an inch away from that first row. Okay, so I'm just going to line this up, and I don't really have a guide here on my plate to tell me, so what I'm going to do is the center of this toe, so here's my presser foot, I'm using about the center of this toe. I'm going to line up this row of stitching I just did with the center of that toe, and that's what I'll use as a guide as I do my next row of stitching. And we'll stitch in the same exact place as we did before. And there we are. Alright, so there's my 2 rows of ease stitches. Okay, let's go ahead down to the bottom of the sleeve, and while it's open still, we'll stay stitch the hem here of our sleeve. We'll do that at 1 inch. And again, that's just like the hem of our skirt. We want to be able to press that up nice and cleanly. So put that right at 1 inch, and here we go. Alright, we've stay stitched that. And now we can go ahead and stitch our sleeve. Alright, so now we've put in our gathering stitches at the cap, and we've stay stitched the hem. Now we can go ahead and stitch the actual underarm seam. So what we're going to do is fold right sides together, like so. And then we can just put some pins in. I'm going to pin it starting at the elbow, lining that up. And then I'll go up to my bicep, pin that, and then down to the hem of the sleeve and pin there. Okay, and now we can just stitch this at 1/2 inch. Alright, back tack beginning and end. And there we go. We now stitch the underarm seam of our sleeve. Okay, let's go to the ironing board and press that open. Okay, we can go ahead and press this sleeve, this underarm seam of our sleeve open. We'll put it right on the sleeve board. And just give it a quick press. Here, where you have your where it turns into your hem, you might need to clip this just so it lays a little flatter. Right there at the hem, I'm going to clip into my seam, but not all the way through. And that just releases it, allows it to pull in the opposite direction like it wants. And now I can go ahead and I'll flip up my hem allowance to the inside of my sleeve. And I'll just roll it so that that stay stitching is right on the edge. Here we go. Now let's go ahead and flip our sleeve. So there it is stitched. Hem folded up. Okay. Let's go ahead and pull our sleeve right side out. And that's what it looks like. Okay. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead and set it into the armhole. All right, let's grab our dress. Here's our dress. Okay, the first thing we need to figure out is which side, which armhole the sleeve goes in. All right, so on your sleeve, look for your directional notches. So here you can see I have 2 directional notches. That's my back. Here's my front. Okay, 1 directional notch there. So it wants to go right here. Again, on my actual armhole of my dress, I have 1 notch there indicating front, and then I have 2 notches in this armhole which indicate back. Okay, so this sleeve wants to go into this armhole, meaning that my other sleeve would go in the other one. Okay, so the first thing we want to do here is we want to line up our side seam of our dress with the underarm seam of our sleeve. Okay, so I'm going to put right sides together, and here's and at the armhole I'm lining up my underarm, my side seam with my underarm seam. Okay, those seams should all be pressed flat or open, so I'm going to go ahead and pin right there through all layers. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come inside of my bodice. All right, I'm on the inside of my bodice now, and here's my side seam where I've pinned my sleeve onto there, and I'm going to work my way up to that first directional notch. In this case, I'm going towards the front, so I'm going to line everything up, and those 2 directional notches should line up, the one on your sleeve with the one on your armhole. If they're a little bit off, that's okay. But if we did everything correctly, they should line up. So there I've pinned up to the front. And now I'm going to pin up to my back directional notches. So again, move all this. And just pin up until you get to those directional notches. Okay, there we go. Now, again, we're inside the bodice. We're going to find the notch on our sleeve cap that lines up with our shoulder seam. And we'll go ahead and line that up and put a pin right in. Okay, so that notch at the top of our cap lines up with our shoulder seam. And I'm going to actually pin through my seam allowance at the top here because I want that to stay open, so you can see at my shoulder seam I just pinned through both seam allowances. Okay, so now you can see here that my sleeve, okay, we're going to ease this in. So here's my front directional notch, here's my shoulder, okay. You can see that the sleeve cap is larger than the armhole, and that's how it's supposed to be right now, okay. So what we're going to do is grab our thread, our 2 ease threads right here, okay, and make sure you're grabbing both of the same threads, meaning you're either grabbing both bobbin threads or both top threads. Typically, both bobbin threads are what you want to grab, okay? So I'm going to grab those, and I'm going to just pull like so, and you can see how it's gathering or easing up my sleeve cap, okay? Again, this is just between my shoulder seam and that first directional notch, okay, in the front. I'm pulling it so that my sleeve cap now is smaller than the armhole. Okay, before it was the armhole that was smaller and the sleeve cap is bigger. Now that I've gathered this so much, the sleeve cap is smaller and the armhole's bigger. Once I've done that, I'm going to pull some of that out until the sleeve cap matches the armhole and they're exactly the same size. Okay, so I'm just going to work that a little bit, and there we go. Okay, now they're the same size. Once I've done that, I'm going to take those threads that I pulled, get these out of the way. Okay, I'm taking those threads that I pulled, and I'm going to anchor them around this pin, okay, and basically figure eighting around it. What that does is it holds those ease stitches exactly where they are, and I can't pull them out, so it won't grow anymore and it won't shrink. All right. Once I've done that, I need to spread this ease proportionally between that first pin and my shoulder. Okay, so I'm just going to take another pin, and just between those two rows, I'm just going to kind of spread that ease as best I can evenly through that part of the sleeve cap. And there's no, great way to do this other than to eye it. Okay. I think that looks about even enough. Once you have it pretty even, go ahead and pin those two seams together. Okay. Again, this is just between that directional notch and the shoulder. And the thing is when you start pinning, if you need to move that ease a little bit more, feel free. You can always repin. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. I think some of this ease right here, I'm going to move down a little further. So I'll unpin that and just kind of and there we go. All right. So now that's all been pinned together, and we can do the other side the same way. Okay. So I'm at the other side now. Move this pin in here. I'm now going to, again, pull those two threads, gathering that part of my cap between the directional notch and the top of the cap so that it's smaller than the armhole. And then I'm going to pull that out until they're exactly the same size. So it looks like right about there. Once I've done that, I'm going to take the two threads that I pulled and I'm going to anchor them or figure eight them right around that pin. And now I'm going to spread that ease as evenly as possible between the shoulder notch, or the shoulder of this arm, the shoulder of the bodice, and the directional notch here. And that looks to be about it. Okay. Once you have it spread pretty evenly, go ahead and pin it together. Let's spread that a little bit more there. That looks good. Okay, so I'm going to pin through all layers. And there it is. Okay, so now I've pinned this all together. Pin a little bit more right here. Alright, it's all been pinned together. Now we can go to the machine and stitch this in. Alright, so let's do that. Alright, we're here at the sewing machine. We're ready to stitch this in. One thing we want to remember is we actually want the side that we eased in, so basically this is the cap of the sleeve, facing up towards us. Okay, the bodice side of the bodice side of this dress will be against the feed dogs. Alright, so let's go ahead and stitch this in. We're going to start at side seam. We're going to stitch it on at 1/2 inch. That's where our seam allowance dictates. And we're going to back tack at beginning and end. Here we go. And go ahead and stitch. So we're going to stitch around this. Now this is a little awkward to stitch because we have like this dress hanging off of this. And the dress will start to kind of roll up as we go. So you're going to have to untwist or unroll your dress as you go. There's a lot of threads here too that kind of get tangled. And you want to make sure everything is flat underneath where you're sewing, because things can kind of bunch up and everything as you're going. Rolling my dress, or unrolling my dress as I go, because it does twist, so I'm untwisting it. Making sure things stay smooth under where I'm sewing. Point out my pins as I go. Don't want to break a needle or have that needle fly up into my face or anything. Okay. Now, your sleeve with the dart at the elbow is constructed the exact same way. The only difference is you have to sew that dart before you sew your underarm seam of your sleeve. But that's really the only big difference in that. Everything else is the same. Alright. We're getting close. We're almost, you can see here is where my other directional notch is, right there where that pin is. So we're actually very close. Because you're kind of sewing this awkward curve into a hole, it really likes to bunch up and stuff on you. And here's where we started stitching. So let's go in back tack right there. We've made it all the way around. Cut our threads. Now don't take out your ease stitches yet. We want to check to make sure everything went in correctly. And if we go and take them out or cut them out now, we have to redo it. We'll have to put those ease stitches back in. Okay. Again, there's a lot of threads in here. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at the inside of this, or on the outside. I'm going to start at my underarm seam. You can see here my underarm seams are matching up. And I'm just going to follow the seam around and make sure that there's no puckers. You'll have some kind of gathering on the sleeve side, but on the bodice side there shouldn't be any puckers or gathering. I'm going to come all the way around until I get back to the underarm seam. And that looks good. Nothing's very clean. Alright, so the sleeve has now been stitched in. Alright, so there it is, all stitched in. If you want, what you can do now is you can just cut your ease stitches, or I like to just pull them out because I like to be nice and clean on the inside. So, but it doesn't really matter. You can just cut them too, where the tails of them are, and leave them in. Lots of people do that too. All right. Okay. So there is the sleeve set into one side. You can see what it looks like here, and that's just a straight sleeve. All right. Okay, there it is. All right, so it's all stitched together. Now we just have the sleeve with dart to do, and then this will be completely done. All right, and you can find a link to that one. All right, just a reminder, the one with a dart, I sewed another one of these dresses a couple years ago, and that sleeve with dart is being sewn into that dress, but it's the exact same dress as this, no difference. So it still works out perfectly. Okay, and then once the sleeve with the dart is sewn in, this is completely done. Okay, I hope you found these videos helpful, and I will see you later.